Look, it might be spicy, but I think Penn State could be a top two team in the Big Ten Conference. Do the Gophers even have a shot at pulling off the upset today?
You are Locked On Golden Gophers, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Gopher fans? You are listening to Locked On Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name's Kane Rob, host of the podcast, former collegiate football video coordinator and recruiting assistant, here to talk Golden Gophers with you each and every day of the week, Monday through Friday. And we are talking about the behind the enemy lines. We are breaking down every single one of the Gophers' opponents for this upcoming 2024 football season. And we're almost there. We're almost done. Today, we are covering the penultimate team in the Penn State Nittany Lions, who will be coming to Dinkytown in week 12. So we're going to break down the changes in coaching staff, changes in personnel, strengths, weaknesses. Is there any shot at a make or break for the Golden Gophers? But I also want to bring you some insights from the latest media practice that happened yesterday. It's the final media practice available to the media members. So we'll talk about some concerns that we still have, the stronger positions, the weaker positions, and really our final thoughts heading into the position breakdown. So once we finish these behind the enemy lines with Wisconsin on tomorrow's show, then we will be moving into position group breakdowns and breaking down where the depth chart could be for the Golden Gophers in each position group. Then we're going to break down how I would rank the group across the Big Ten. So definitely be sure to hit subscribe over on YouTube so you don't miss any of that good Gophers content moving forward. If you have any questions, thoughts, concerns, people you want to hear more about, drop them in the comments below over on YouTube so I can make sure to get more of that involved as well. And then as we get closer, as we get towards predictions, I'll definitely get my boy Tristan Spanford on the show with me again. We'll do predictions with him this season. So hopefully you are ready to tap in, you're hitting subscribe, you're following along on it wherever you get your podcast, and you're leaving a 5-star review so others can find the show. But let's talk about the final notes from the final media available practice that happened yesterday. Now, there was one thing that was at the top of my mind, and that is that there are injuries happening still, and it's very unfortunate because it's to some of the most important players on the Gophers. You talk about Daniel Jackson. He was not suited up to practice in that final media availability for practice. He hadn't been the practice before, I believe, either, and he really hasn't practiced much over the last week. Coach Fleck had mentioned that they're hoping to get him back soon, but the trainers wanted to hold him out. We hear that all the time. I don't know what that necessarily means. Does that mean he's dealing with a medium risk injury? Does that mean he's dealing with something that's more serious than we think? Does that mean he's getting vet days? I just don't know. But when it strings up to multiple days, I do think that it is something a little bit more of a concern as opposed to a complete non-threat. Now, hopefully it's something minor. It seems like it's something minor and that he could be back relatively soon in these next couple weeks of practice before week 1 officially hits. But it wasn't just Daniel Jackson. In today's or yesterday's practice, we saw Darius Taylor come up a little gingerly. He had a little bit of a limp to him. It was on a deep ball from Drake Lindsay down the left sideline of the field. He overthrew Darius Taylor. Darius Taylor was working for the ball, and then I don't know what happened, but when he came up, you could see he was not happy. He did not feel the greatest. He went down to his right knee and kind of grabbed at the back of his left hamstring area. A trainer came out and worked with him and talked with him and what have you. Then they worked again later in that next practice period. And then finally we see Darius Taylor with ice around that left leg, around the hamstring knee area. So overall, hopefully that is minor. Coach Fleck said in the press conference to the media after, when questioned about it, that the report back is it's minor and it's nothing to worry about. We will see, but I feel like even if it was something medium, again, not even bad, but medium, I don't think Fleck would raise any alarms to that. So hopefully it's something not too crazy. Hopefully it isn't necessarily a hamstring. Hopefully it's just something that pulled a little bit or what have you, but hopefully he can get back at it and be 100% ready to go for week 1. But those are two main players on this offense that you absolutely don't want to see the word injury anywhere near their name. So Gophers fans will be crossing their fingers and holding their breath until they hear more. Now, beyond the injuries themselves, we saw Darius Green come back from not really being able to practice a lot of this early fall camp, not practicing much in the spring at all. He was working into the rotations with the safeties. Now, the safeties and the wide receivers are the two position groups that I think are still in question for this Gophers team when it comes to maybe starting positions or how much impact or how much rotation we will see in the 2024 season. Now, other camp battles that are still being decided right now, I believe the right tackle position between Phillip Daniels and Martez Lewis is still in the thick of it. I think that could go into the season. You could see them rotate a bit, but if it all had to come down on a bet, I think it comes down to Phillip Daniels, just with the upside, the physicality, the mentality, and the long-term longevity. I think Phillip Daniels is going to make a claim on that job, but like I said, it could play into the season a few games as well with a rotation. Now, I had said the safeties are still a position of question, but it's also a position that it has camp battles going on. Aiden Gooseby is getting a lot of looks. Kerry Brown is getting a lot of looks. Coleman Bryson is getting a lot of looks. And now Darius Green is working in there as well. Didn't see as many reps with Coy Parrish back there. I think he is still fresh and still learning a lot. And it's like drinking from a water hose. So I think it's going to take him some time to really get in there. But the Gophers are throwing a lot at him. I do think he is going to contribute in his true freshman season. It's just at what capacity? Is it in a special teams capacity, a returning capacity, an occasional seeing the field defensively in matchups like Rhode Island or Nevada or what have you as he gets warmed up to it? Or who knows? I think it will build, it will grow as he gets more familiar, but the team looked a little tired today. And when I say tired, I don't mean just like moping around of sorts or what have you. I think they just looked a little gassed. I think the Gophers have been working them a lot this fall camp to really figure out what they have going on. And I think that they're competitors and they're dogs and they're ready to get after it. So I think they were a little gassed in today's final practice. So the position camp battles, like I said, right tackles, safeties, I think the twos on the defensive line are still battling, especially on the interior, and then the wide receivers to some extent. I think you're going to see Daniel Jackson, Elijah Spencer, and most likely Lemeki Brockington as your starting three wide receivers. That being said, I do think you're going to see some of these young guys rotate in there. And I love that because you're going to get looks at them. You're going to get some understandings of them. Hopefully Tyler Williams, Kendrick Lanier, TJ McWilliams, Nuke Hayes. Some of these guys get opportunities and they can capitalize and grow their role and be the future of the program. That would be huge if one or two of those guys could really step up into bigger roles for the Gophers in the passing game. But we will see. That's kind of the camp battles I'm looking at. Now, the rooms I feel most comfortable with, offensive line. They have a good 8 or 9 players that can play now if needed. Super, super deep. I like that offensive line. The running back room. Though Darius Taylor, you're worried about keeping him healthy. That's priority numero uno. That being said, I think it's also going to mean rotating these running backs a bit more. I think you're going to see Marcus Major. I think you're going to see C.A. Bangura. I think you might see Jordan Newman from time to time. Overall, you've still got Jaron Mangingham as in the backfield as well. So there's 5 running backs right there, plus Femi Ijiboy. That's 6 running backs really that you have talent, depth, ability with. So I think you're going to see a healthy amount of running backs. Now, yes, Darius Taylor will lead this room, but I think the running back room is one I feel really comfortable with. Now, beyond that, I think the cornerbacks room, I really, really like the top 4 in this group. Mike Gerald is very intriguing as a 5th cornerback as well, but your guys like Justin Wally, Ethan Robinson, Zaquan Bryan, Rylan Kelly, really like the upside of all of those guys, and I feel confident in them. And you're going to have to, playing against a USC Trojans, playing against a Penn State Nittany Lions, playing against UCLA might want to move the ball around a little bit, but overall you're playing against some quality passing offenses this upcoming season, and you're going to have to find a way to get stops and get it done. So that cornerback depth long term is going to be really good for this team. Now, my biggest concerns heading into the year, will the pass catchers step up? Will the team be healthy? That's a big question, especially as we hear these things coming out of these final media practice, but also because of last year and how the health really hurt the Gophers overall. On top of that, can Minnesota's defense stop the run? I think you have the personnel to do it, but you're going to have a big test in week 1 of the season against a Doak Walker finalist, one of the best running backs in the country in Omarion Hampton. He's going to be a big test. So I think that's going to be a question we get answered relatively quickly. Now, beyond that, can the defense get back to elite on third down production? That's going to be massive because that's when the Gophers are at their best. When you get off the field on third downs, get the ball back in your offense's hands and run the clock, time of possession battles, and what have you. If Minnesota can do that on defense, this offense should have the personnel to be more successful on the offense, keep the ball in their hands longer, and hopefully ultimately win more games. So those are a lot of my biggest concerns heading into the season. And the final concern that I have, I was talking with my guy Dan Owen over at 247 Sports. I think the biggest question right now is if Minnesota gets down by multiple scores, can they hit big pass plays? Can they hit the explosives? Can they get the 30-yard, 40-yard pass plays? Can they make those connections? Because right now we've seen a lot of checkdowns. We've seen a lot of short throws. We've seen 10, 15-yard throws as the more longer throws in all the team periods and all the 7-on-7 periods, and even in some of the different concepts when you're just throwing routes on air. But will we ever look for the explosives aside from designed here and there 5 shots in a game? Will we have moments where we can just dial it up, feel comfortable, and know the quarterback can get it there, know the receivers can get open in those routes and those points? I think that is going to be something that is very pertinent to this Gopher season, and I think it's a key element we haven't seen much of in the limited practice availability. So overall, those are my biggest concerns heading into the season, but we're going to talk about the hardest opponent on the Gopher schedule in the Penn State Nittany Lions. We're breaking them down with coaching changes, personnel, and more coming up next. First, I want to talk to you about our friends over at Gametime, because Gametime is the best ticketing app out there, hands down, no questions asked. They have the best guarantees out there. They have killer last-minute deals up to tickets, and they are a sponsored partner with the MLB, meaning that you can get tickets cheaper, closer to the first pitch, and they're an authorized ticketing marketplace for the MLB. So it's the place to be when it comes to tickets for sports, including the MLB, and also from comedy events, theater shows, concerts, you name it. They've got you covered over at Gametime. You're definitely going to want to give them a look, and you can have so much assurance in feeling right with your purchase because you have the panoramic seat view where you can see your view from your seat before you even buy the tickets. On top of that, you can hit the all-in prices, so that way you can see your price straight up with no hidden fees or anything like that beyond that. And they have the best coverage when it comes to not being able to maybe go to the event or job loss or anything like that. They have one of the most flexible coverage packages out there. So overall, you're definitely going to want to give Gametime a try. Download the app today, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, download the Gametime app, use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Gopher fans, let's talk about Penn State and the changes that are happening, especially in the coaching and personnel. First, you've got the same head coach, James Franklin, coming back for his 11th season with the Penn State Nittany Lions. Now, he had 3 years at Vanderbilt prior to coming to Penn State, and he won 6 games, 9 games, and 9 games. Now, when's the last time you've heard of Vanderbilt winning 9 games? It's probably with James Franklin. So he has had some success in his coaching career. Now, his only season below 500 with Penn State was the COVID year where it was cut short, and he was 4-5 on the season. Aside from that, his career record is 112 wins to 54 losses, and Penn State has finished in the top 12 of the final CFP rankings in 6 out of the last 8 years. So this should be a team that could be dialed up for a college football playoff contention spot this year and pushing for a hopeful Natty championship. Now, his new coordinators on the staff, Tom Allen, defensive coordinator year 1, former Indiana head coach for the past, I believe, like 7 or 8 years. This man knows defense, and he will likely show that very quickly in the conference that he knows, he loves, he's familiar with. So I think he can do some scary things. Now, in 2016, he led the Hoosiers in a big defensive defensive improvement in the country. And on the flip side, you got the offensive coordinator, Andy Kotelnicki, year one with Penn State. Now, he was with Kansas the last 3 years as the offensive coordinator. He's known for his explosive offense over the last 3 years. They were 12th in the nation or 12th amongst all the teams in the last 3 years with 20-plus yard plays. They were 15th in 30-plus yard plays and 11th in 40-plus yard plays. So he likes to move the ball down the field with explosive shots. Now, Kansas also scored 40-plus points in 9 games in those 3 years. So this could be a high-flying offense that Penn State needs. Now, beyond the staff, the changes there, we're talking about the transfer portal. They have 6 players coming from the transfer portal, so not a crazy amount for a school that could be seen as a top-tier, high-quality school across the power conferences. Only 6 transfers coming in. Big key name, Julian Fleming, wide receiver from Ohio State, coming in. You've also got Jalen Kimber, a cornerback from Florida, AJ Harris, a cornerback from Georgia, who could potentially start for him this year. And then Jordan Meyer, an edge rusher from Wisconsin, and Nolan Rucci, who is an offensive tackle from Wisconsin, who also could be a potential starter. So some high power players coming from power schools into the transfer portal for Penn State. Definitely some possibilities on that front. Now, when you're going through the rooms, breaking them down room by room, and you're talking about the quarterbacks, this is a big one for Penn State. Drew Aller is a piece of having yet another double-digit season with a good bowl, or he could be the key to unlocking and winning the Big Ten championship, getting to a college football playoff appearance, and seeing how far they can go. That's how much talent Drew Aller has in his abilities as a quarterback, but can he unleash that with new offensive coordinator Andy Kotelnicki? Now, that is a lot of pressure for a former 5-star quarterback, but it is a bit warranted. He has to do better than 59.9% completion percentage that he had from last year. If he can build on his 2,631 pass yards, 25 pass touchdowns, and having only 2 interceptions, if he can build on that and keep the interceptions down, get above 30 touchdowns, get above 3K passing, he could find himself in the NFL conversation even after this next season with a bit more work. Now, if that happens, Penn State is going to be finding success on the field. Regardless, they have another young guy waiting in the wings who's coming in this class of 2024 and Ethan Grunkmeyer. That's definitely a name to keep in mind for the future of Penn State football as a top-end quarterback in the latest recruiting class. Now you move to the running backs, and this is personally my favorite running back room in the Big Ten, aside from Minnesota, setting the bias aside. Yes, Ohio State with Judkins and Henderson is nice, and it's great talent. Yes, Donovan Edwards and Ben Hall could be nasty in Michigan, but I feel that this Penn State room is the one. Now, with Judkins and Henderson, they're a bit more redundant in my eyes. They have very similar skill sets, whereas Nick Singleton, who reminds me of Nick Chubb with better hands, he can be more of a punisher, a bruiser, a power back. And then you've got Katron Allen, who has amazing speed, who can be a quick cutback, who can be a receiving back. They're more of a fire and ice combo. And I think that overall, they can be the best running back combo in the Big Ten if given the opportunity. Now, last year they combined for 1,654 yards and 14 touchdowns on the ground. They also, the year prior, as true freshmen, combined for 1,928 yards and 22 touchdowns. So it was definitely a dip in production last season, but I believe the best is yet to come for this duo. And we talked about how Kotelnicki wants an offense with explosives. Those 2 players are explosive players. Now you move to the wide receiver room, and they lost their biggest wide receiver in production in Keandre Lambert-Smith, who ended up transferring to Auburn. Beyond him, Harrison Wallace is back. He will probably play a similar role to last year. He had 20 receptions for 230 yards. You've got Julian Fleming coming in from Ohio State. Now, he was never the man at Ohio State. Last year, he had almost 300 yards receiving. Year prior, he had like 560 yards receiving. So he's never been that like 1K double-digit touchdowns type guy, but he has the talent to be a stud and to be the number 1 option for Penn State. That could go a long way. He could see that 5-star ability. He came in as a high school recruit, maybe come to fruition as a, I believe, 6th-year senior or 5th-year senior this upcoming year. So that's definitely a name that, in my opinion, will probably be the wide receiver 1 in this room. Now, one name I've always liked, but I haven't seen much from is Caden Saunders. He's a guy who has a lot of skill set. I think he's a redshirt sophomore. He might even be a redshirt junior this year. he's a name that I think I might be ready to throw in the towel for, but this room is definitely the biggest question marks of the whole team. Not just the offense, but the entire Penn State team. The wide receivers could make or break it, but luckily you've got those running backs who can both catch the ball, and they've shown that the past 2 seasons. And you've also got a tight end room that can show to be weapons in the pass game. Now they have Tyler Warren leading this room. He actually led this room in production last year, even with NFL draft pick Theo Johnson, who is likely going to be the starting tight end for the New York Giants. Now, Tyler Warren was the second. He was second on the entire team in receiving last year. And honestly, I believe Warren is the best tight end in the Big Ten this season. Michigan fans are probably going to be pissed at me for that, but you'll live. Anyways, if he can build on the 422 yards, 7 touchdowns that he had last season when he was splitting a lot of tight end reps or getting some of the looks taken away by his internal competition of Theo Johnson, if he can get some of those targets and get more production, he could be a Big Ten first team player and maybe even sniff an All-American at the tight end position. So Tyler Warren is definitely a guy to know. They've also got some young guys, Rappelia in that room. They've got a 5-star coming in this 2024 class. So the tight end room should be in good hands for years to come. He moved to the offensive line. Drew Shelton, the left tackle, he played nearly 400 snaps in games last year, but graded poorly across the board. Ione, I don't know how to say his first name, left guard, starter last year, graded average across the board. Nick Dawkins, a center, nearly 200 snaps last year, played well. Sal Wormley, another starter from last year, he's back. He graded slightly above average, so you love to have that. And then Nolan Rucci, the transfer from Wisconsin, he played very limited time, but he held his own in those spots. I think that offensive line can be solid. They have the size and the build. Can they show the talent on the field? That's going to be a big question for Penn State, and their offensive ceiling will come between this offensive line and if the quarterback can get the passing game to another level. If they can do that, they can be one of the best teams in the Big Ten. Now you flip it to the defensive side of the ball, and this is a nasty defense. Last year, they were second in total defense, 7th in the pass defense, 1st in the rush defense, 3rd in the scoring defense, and 12th in the nation in turnovers gained. So they were a top 5 defense across the board when it comes to consistency across those 5 big categories. This is another Big Ten team that was a top 5 unit, and I think there were 3 of them last year that were top 5 defenses in the country. Michigan was first. I'd say Georgia was up there, Penn State, and then Iowa. That's where you get your 3 Big Ten schools. We're all up there in that top 5 conversation. I think Texas had a case. Ohio State had a case. UCLA at times had a case. So overall, the Big Ten brings defense, and this is one of them. The Penn State Nittany Lions. Last year, the defense had 15 players, over 300 snaps played, and of those 15, 1 graded average on PFF, 14 of them graded above average, and 5 of them were graded as elite players. So a number of those guys have moved on to the NFL. A lot of them heard their names called on draft day, but they still have 8 of those 15 coming back for the Nittany Lions this upcoming season, including their best player, in my opinion, in Abdul Carter. He's an edge. He has the potential to be a number 1 NFL draft pick. I'm not talking about a first round draft pick. I'm talking about the number 1 pick in the first round. Abdul Carter is that special. Now, last year he had 50 tackles, 5 pass breakups, 1 interception, 4.5 sacks, and a forced fumble as a linebacker. They're kicking him to the edge rushing position this year. You could see more sack production. You could see more game-changing presence, and I think that's what goes into his stock is his versatility. Beyond him, you've got your tackle leader back in Kevin Winston. He had 60 tackles on the team last year. And I don't know if I said his position. If I did, I might have said it wrong, but he is a safety. Now, on top of that, you have your interceptions leader in Jalen Reed back. He has 2 interceptions from last year, plus 46 tackles. And then you've got a linebacker in Kobe King. So they have a staple on each side, or every level of the defense. You've got the line in Abdul Carter. You've got the linebacker in Kobe King. You've got a cornerback in Jalen Reed, and you've got a safety in Kevin Winston. This defense may be more impressive than the offense, and that is truly something with the talent that we just discussed on the offense. So overall, I think this is going to be a really top-notch team. They have 26 commits in their class of 2024, including 1 5-star and 9 4-stars. Now, players that could make an impact, some might not, but their highest rated guy is Luke Reynolds, 5-star tight end. I don't think he's going to get on the field this year, or at least not in much capacity, but he should be the future of this tight end room that has been productive and produced guys year after year after year. Now, beyond him, they also have 3 4-star offensive linemen in Liam Andrews, Garrett Sexton, and the second highest rated player in their class in Cooper Cousins. And then beyond that, you have Ethan Grunkmeyer, the quarterback I had mentioned. The Gophers actually heavily pursued Ethan Grunkmeyer. It felt like they were on the verge of maybe a commitment, and then Penn State got involved and everything changed up. And Ethan was he's 3-star, borderline 4-star when the Gophers were recruiting him. Now, after a big senior year, after committing to a big helmet school, after all of that, he finds himself in the top 10 quarterbacks in the country in the class of 2024 and a very high 4-star guy. So he could be the future of the position for Penn State. But the last time these two schools met up, it was a demolishing by Penn State of the Minnesota Golden Gophers in Ethan Kaliakmanis' first ever start and a whiteout game. But the time before that, it was a major win in 2019 for the Gophers and saw them jump into the top 10 rankings in the country. This Penn State team is the most difficult game, in my opinion, in the entire season for the Golden Gophers. And even with it, Minnesota, I think Penn State has a solid chance to be in the CFP hunt. I think they also have a chance at a Big Ten championship appearance if they can get the best out of their quarterback. But what are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? What is the make or break for this matchup? We're diving into that to wrap up today's show, coming up next. All right, Gophers fans, let's talk about strengths, weaknesses, and make or break to wrap this one up. Now, Penn State, what isn't a strength, to be honest? I mean, they addressed play calling, which was a big issue last year, but now you've got Kotelnicki, now you've got Tom Allen. I think both sides of the ball are going to take huge advances in production and advances in coaching and adjustments throughout the season from those two additions. On top of that, you have 2 of the best running backs in the country, my favorite pairing in the Big Ten, over Ohio State, over Michigan. And then on top of that, a top-end wide receiver coming from a rival program in Ohio State that could maybe be a game changer for you in the pass game. Now, one of the very best defenses in the country, plus a nice tight end room, plus a very favorable schedule. You can see why I'm starting to be like, man, maybe this is adding up for Penn State, because I thought Penn State had the ability to get to a Big Ten championship last year, but the play calling was off and the coaching was off. If you fixed your play calling this offseason with the big moves you made and you still have this top-notch personnel and you brought in some names, it could be scary. It could be good, especially with a favorable schedule where they don't play Oregon or Michigan. They only take on Ohio State of the big other schools in the Big Ten. So I think that all of that is a strength for Penn State. Now, weaknesses. They have a quarterback who hasn't been playing to his potential. That being said, his potential is out of this world. So if he does, this weakness, quote unquote, can turn into a strength very, very quickly. Now, they might be a little bit less deep on the defense, but they still have that top end talent across the board. So they have a lot of top end talent. But if injuries do come to this team, then maybe that could hamper the potential and the upside of the Penn State Nittany Lions. And then finally, the final other 2 weaknesses I would say are the biggest 2 is that it's not the most talented wide receiver room beyond transfer Julian Fleming. I think there's a lot to be desired in that wide receiver room, and a lot of people are going to have to step up in order to help them take a next step. And then the upside of their offensive line feels pretty minuscule compared to the rest of the team and compared to the rest of the Big Ten. I think this offensive line is average at best, and I'm not sure it has a ton of upside across the whole front. Now, when you're talking about make or break for this matchup for the Gophers in 2024, this is a game that I'm not really giving Minnesota a shot in. One of those prayers of a game that you need the best of the best in all in one game, plus you need some luck to fall your way. And if all that happens, then maybe you pull an upset. But if PJ Fleck isn't willing to go for it, if he isn't willing to be aggressive, if he isn't willing to take shots, then no matter what, even through potential mistakes, if there's a pick or a potential deflection or a drop or what have you, you can't bail from it. You still have to go aggressive, still have to take risks and take shots to have a shot, a 1% chance at pulling the upset. You have to take an aggressive approach. And if they do not, then Minnesota will get left behind in this game. So my top 3 make or breaks in this game is that you will need to throw the ball, throw it everywhere, throw it to everyone, diverse, spread out of targets, and keep drives going. That's going to be pertinent if you want to have any chance at moving the ball, keeping time of possession, or what have you. You're going to have an efficient and productive passing game. Now, also on the flip side, you need to put pressure on the quarterback and make him uncomfortable. Drew Aller has shown some chinks in the armor. Now, he doesn't turn the ball over, but he can get off the field relatively quickly, and that is what the Gophers like to capitalize on. Get off the field on third down, be efficient on that front, and get the ball back into your offense's hands. So this is a game where you have to try and have a cleaner, more efficient play on your end on the offensive ball while creating chaos on their end with the quarterback and the ball in his hands. And then finally, I've already stated it, it's the biggest make or break, but once again, play hungry, play to win the game. Do not play it safe. That's going to wrap us for this Penn State behind enemy lines breakdown. I hope you enjoyed it. Tomorrow is our last one with the rivals, the Wisconsin Badgers. I'm sure they're going to be all up in my mentions, all up in the comments, all talking trash and what have you. But we got to do it. We got to break it down. We got to finish that up. And then we're going to go to the position groups after that. Be sure to hit subscribe over on YouTube. I appreciate y'all for listening and tapping in. I will see you next time. Row the boat, Sky, you go Gophers, as always. And don't forget to hit subscribe.